talking about homework 1 a little bit, and note that you now have homework 2, which is your final homework assignment for the course. Not too many professors can tell you that at this point in time in the course. But we basically just have 2 items of homework, homework 1 and 2. Homework 1 is the template for what we will be doing next Monday, which will be a test where you'll be given a brand new invention and a brand new set of prior art, and then you'll make the comparisons and do the very same thing you did on homework 1, except this will count a lot more on your grade. The primary components of your grade will be homework 2 and the final exam. And these are, other things are a portion of your grade, but not a very large portion. If we can talk a little bit about the two-handled leaf rake. Have any of you had a chance to look over the sample answers that I passed out and have any comments or questions about any of them? A device which reflects light would be a really nice answer. The prior art is black and therefore doesn't reflect light. And notice that the sample definition doesn't mention anything about leaf rakes or handles or anything else. It's just a device which reflects light. Another proposed answer is a 2-part device which has one part movably coupled to the other to allow the one part to move with respect to the other. Doesn't say anything about raking leaves, or doesn't talk about the leaves, doesn't talk about a method, just talks about a device that's very broadly defined given the constraint of the particular prior art that is given as the only source of prior art. Now from this example, you can see how important it is to have the best prior art available to see how broadly you can claim your invention. If you had much closer prior art, and we all know from our real experiences that there are other things in the prior art that have one part movably coupled to the other, and so that claim would be too broad, except under our example for the homework. We have to assume that the only prior art is that which is given. And so the critical thing to remember from all of this is you really have to get the best prior art together when you start writing definitions for your invention that will serve as a template for a patent application or serve as an understanding for how you can license it and how easy it would be for somebody to design around what it is that you're trying to license. A handle with one round hole is another example. A lot of people looked at the prior art rake and said it didn't have a hole, but if you look at the prior art, there actually are triangular holes in the bottom part of the rake, so you have to define the hole as something other than a hole. You have to say that it's a round hole. And you could also say that the hole is in the handle rather than on the implement head. There are a lot of people put in specifics of dimensions where there would be a bend that would be a 90-degree bend or the like. And when you do that, and that's in your definition, anybody who uses anything other than a 90-degree bend is going to avoid that definition. And that's not a very valuable patent if somebody can put in an 83-degree bend and avoid the patent because you foolishly put in 90 degrees as a requirement for the definition. And then 83 degrees is not going to infringe a 90-degree recitation. So you have to think very carefully when you put in specifics so that it doesn't give an opportunity for other people to design around effortlessly.
So you would say you just have all bend?
I don't know. You would use the broadest term you could think of that still avoided the prior art. You certainly wouldn't pick the specific dimension of the angle. You could say a bend, or you could say it's angled. That would be fine as long as that doesn't still read on the prior art. It's a little tricky in that there are angles in the prior art, and the ends of the tines of the prior art have a little bit of an angle on them. So you might have to say that the handle has a bend in it, rather than the leaf rake has in it, or the implement has a bend in it. You can't just say a bent element, because a bent element would read on the prior art tines at the end. So that's how you go about that. We will do the same kind of thing. We're going to have a little bit more experimentation. Now, what happens in the real world when you come up with these inventions is that you sit down and you find the best prior art and you write all of these definitions, but you have no idea what history is going to do to those definitions. And in the particular case of the leaf rake, we actually do know what history did to that leaf rake, because a patent was filed, a patent issued, and a product was actually commercialized. And then what you can do is you can look back over the patent claims that you wrote, the invention definitions that you wrote, and compare it to what is the actual product that was sold in the marketplace. Some of you talked about the handle having a loop or a horizontal member going across between the two sides. Well, that patent claim wouldn't be of much value to this commercial product. Other of you had in a lot of your claims that the length was extendable. They dropped that feature in the commercial version. It's still rotatable with detents, so your detent claim or the rotating claim would be fine as long as you didn't have other limitations that they dropped. So you can think about what happened when this thing went to market, or what might happen if a competitor wants to go to market and avoid your patent. They'll look through your patent claim and see if there's any one thing in your patent claim that they can drop from their product and still have a successful competing product, and they'll drop that. And then your patent claim won't be able to be asserted against them if they don't have all of the elements in the claim. That's why it's so important to write broad claims. This is a real product that was actually sold for some time on QVC, Home Shopping Network, whatever. I bought this one at a store a little bit north of here in West Lafayette. It was for sale. So that's sort of feedback. When you look at the patent claims that you wrote, would it have covered that or not? Of course, if any one of the claims that you wrote covers that, you're in good shape, because any one claim is as good as all of them. You can still sue them. Yeah?
Do you have to claim on what improvement that gives you over the prior art?
Your claim cannot read on the prior art, but as to the advantages, you don't have to recite that in the patent claim or in the patent application. You can argue that later in court if you wish, but it's not a requirement of the patent application that you point out the advantages. Sometimes it's helpful to be persuasive to the patent examiner to say why it's so great. Other times it's better off if you don't say that, because it may turn out there may be another reason you're not appreciating that may surface, and you don't want to have committed to one argument when in fact another argument might have been better. There's a famous Supreme Court case, Graham v. John Deere, that criticized the arguments of counsel that were only raised on appeal. They weren't even raised when the patent was being processed or in the court below, and they said it was just an afterthought, so they're going to ignore that argument as to why it works. So in some respects, putting arguments in can be a benefit, but most often you really want to just show what the thing is and how it works, and why the prior art that you're aware of is deficient, and that by implication shows why yours is better. Okay, any questions, further questions about the exercise we did last time?
So if you were to write like a patent application, would you include like 50 different claims in there, and each of those claims would be like a separate application then?
I had one patent application with 114 claims. If you can do that, and they all issued without objection, that's the ideal, because you never know what the future is going to bring, and even though you think you have everything figured out, at the time you write the patent application, perspectives change over time, and it's very hard to have the correct perspective to get exactly the right claims the first time around. And that's why you generally write many different claims. The nominal number of claims without paying extra fees is 20. 3 independent claims and a total of 20 claims. But as much money as you want to spend on patent fees, you can have as many claims as you want within very broad limits. Okay, ask if there were any further questions. I think we went over the claim breadth exercise last time pretty well. If there's any questions that remain, that's fine. I think we'll just do some exercises today on writing claims. And we'll start out with one that I've put on the board somewhat crudely, but at least it's there for us to talk about. And we're going to try to write some patent claims. And this is the sort of thing that you'll be doing for real in a test next class period. We have an invention, which is a bicycle. The only prior art that exists in the universe is a prior art tricycle. And the question is, the tricycle happens to be all gold-plated, except for solid rubber tires, black leather seat, and it has drive links from the pedals that you push back and forth, that they're suspended with little pivot points there. The bicycle is all black except for gold sidewalls on the pneumatic tires, a gold leather seat, and chain drive for the pedals. The other question is, can we think of any patent claim that we might want to write for the bicycle? I give you as much time as you like on the test, so not to fear. You will not fail for lack of time.
So is there a reason we're choosing gold?
Just the Purdue colors.
So I mean, normally would you not want to specify in such a specific color because you can make a red one or?
The prior art is going to be some color, and I'm just telling you what that color is. The invention is going to be some color, so far as the preferred way of making the invention. Writing the claims is something totally different. You want the claims to be broad. So we must not confuse the writing of the invention definition with the specific embodiment that the inventor came up with. That's going to be very, very narrow. It's going to have a particular alloy of steel in the spokes, which I haven't shown. It's going to have a particular grade of leather from a particular species of cow. That's all going to be in the thing that he made. The inventor made, and the prior art similarly is going to have enormous detail in the actual product that got made. In particular formulation for the solid rubber tires, how that got made, and at what temperatures the rubber got cured at, or whatever. But we don't really have to worry about all those details. We're trying to get broad coverage of the invention. It's clueless. Ah, there we go.
Just write a claim for the chain.
Chain. Good. All right. What are we going to write for the chain? We'll try something and go from there.
Could it just be chain?
Chain. Okay. Chain. Is there any chain in the prior art? Okay. Claim one wheel, doesn't that read on the prior art?
But I thought if they didn't have,
How do we know what their claims are?
yeah,
We don't care what their claims are. It's irrelevant. Prior art doesn't come with claims. Prior art is something, and we have to prevent our claims from reading on that something. Yes?
Would it be negative to say less than 3 wheel?
Less than 3 wheel? A vehicle with less than 3 wheels that contact the ground? How about that?
Is that negative?
It is, but not too negative. Pneumatic tires. All right, we can go with pneumatic tires. Less than 3 wheels was one of them, which is somewhat negative, but that's okay. It's better than nothing at all. Well, okay. This is a first pass. I've never come up with my best claims at my first attempt, so we will. All right, that's good. Any other thoughts?
Could you make the second claim more broad by saying less than or greater than 3 wheels?
I don't think that's an interesting question. Basically a vehicle with not 3 wheels? I think probably not, although there's no theoretical reason why you couldn't. But I mean, the ultimate claim is always not the prior art, exactly as shown. But they don't let you do that, where you claim all inventions that will ever be made hereafter. And certainly, this is not the prior art, and so it's supported by this. But that's a little too broad. Yeah.
Can we mention something about, is there a difference in I guess the motion of the feet to drive the bicycle?
You can do whatever you would like. This is open.
But I'm not familiar with, is this one just up and down instead of like a circular motion?
This rotates. It has pivot points, and you push back and forth. These are suspended here.
So the motion that the feet are taking are different than what we have here?
Yes, they are. So this one goes around in a circle, and these go a little bit differently, depending upon where this pivot point is and how this is hooked. But they're certainly not hooked together with an axle between the pedal on the right and the pedal on the left, other than through the linkage to the back wheel. It might be.
I came up with multicolored rubber.
Multicolored rubber. All right. Rubber.
Can you just say colored rubber? Because multicolored would apply more than one color.
Assuming that black is not a color, you can, but if you assume black is a color, you can't.
What's the precedent for that?
However you want to define it in your patent application when you write it. You could also, if you want to assume the position that rubber is black and absorbs all light, a reflective rubber. That would work.
Why do we do multicolored rubber?
Multicolor requires 2. A reflective rubber would cover a pure white tire or a pure gold tire, which would be a broader claim.
The prior art didn't have edge color on the tires.
The prior art has solid rubber tires, and we're assuming the rubber is black. But if it's not specified, then you couldn't do that. You're correct, yeah.
So in the same vein, can we go with colored leather?
Yes, we could go with leather that reflects light. That's good. Okay. Yeah.
Tire sidewalls.
Tire sidewalls.
Get the sidewalls that apparently has, and there's nothing on these tires.
Those are solid rubber. These are gold sidewalls.
Are the sidewalls not like things above the tires?
They used to have white sidewalls on the old cars, which is a little ring of white on the side. where the rubber meets the road, tires are most always black, but wouldn't
What are
necessarily.
the fenders on that?
Those are fenders shown on there. I didn't mention them, but there are fenders here. And there are no fenders on the tricycle. So we could just say fenders. Yeah, that's easy. Okay.
The pneumatic tires, those are the hollow ones that you pump up.
That's right. That has air in them.
Right. So can you say like air containing? Contains air.
Contains air. A device that contains air, not even limited. So a beach ball would be encompassed by your claim?
Yeah. Like tires. I mean, if that doesn't work, you
We're
go a
assuming
little more
that frame
specific.
is solid metal, so it's not like tubular.
If you have solid rubber tires, they're
Well, but you could say a sealed object containing air.
yeah.
Ah, yes. Very good. A sealed object containing fluid. Now we're actually getting some really good stuff here. Okay, so instead of pneumatic tires, we can do better and say sealed object containing a fluid.
When you say a fluid versus fluid, is there any difference in that?
That's fine. It's even better. Fewer words are better. Thanks.
Did you say a raw material frame? Because that frame has gold plating on it, so that would be two materials.
I didn't really specify the frame material in the invention bicycle, except that it was black. So that's going to be, I suppose it could be black, solid black, carbon composite or something. And that, all we know is that is plated. We don't know what makes this one black, whether it's a black coloring or whether it's a solid black material made out of Bakelite or who knows what. Bakelite frames aren't too popular these days, but gears, I like that. We have chain, but we didn't have the sprockets. But the sprocket, is a sprocket a kind of a gear, you think? All in favor? Okay. We'll put gear.
Could you say like a pulley?
A pulley. I don't know whether a chain would be considered a pulley or not.
Because the drive chain is not exactly, but the chain is closer.
It is close to a pulley, but I don't know. Is there a generic term for pulley and chain? Or belt and chain? I don't know. It's what. Yeah?
A vehicle balanced with a kickstand, is that too specific?
I haven't. That has no kickstand. But what you could say is a vehicle that's not stable in resting position. Except then if it was laying down on the ground, it would be stable. So you'd have to define its position. Yeah.
Can we say an object that translates circular motion?
I think both of them.
I thought we decided the other one was not necessarily circular. And I was
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to think about how this linkage works. And to the extent you wanted to spin the rear wheels of this, that circular motion would get translated into the movement of the pedals. So I would say as it's coasting down the road, it will be translating circular motion.
Okay, because we haven't defined how it's supposed to.
You have enough limitations in your definition to force it to be the circular motion somewhere other than the wheel on the ground. So that won't work.
Can you say like free moving pedals? I don't know if the pedals on this one's fixed.
Well, I had assumed that these things spun around on some kind of bearing here. And those probably don't, because I haven't shown that they do. So you could say, well, none of them are completely free to move, and they all move. So we need a few more words to help differentiate if we're going to focus on the pedal design. Let's look at chain and gear. Would it be broader to say a link of a chain as opposed to a chain? Chain requires more than one link, I assume. So a chain link would be the broader term. Okay. Pneumatic tires, we've done really well there. Multicolored rubber, if we assume rubber is black, we can fix that assumption. We'll define rubber as black. If that's the case, we can be much broader than multicolored rubber and say any rubber that reflects light would be a much broader term. Okay. Light reflecting rubber. Yeah?
Could you say an object that is upright only in motion?
You could say that, but I've taken a lot of bicycles and inverted them, set them on their seat and their handlebars, and they sit there just fine. So that isn't really a property of the bike. You need more words to say, while the handlebars are above the wheels, it would be unstable except when in motion. Or you'd need something more to add to that definition to prevent it from inadvertently, and you might have to say the handlebars are completely above the wheels because as it falls over and lays on the ground, part of the handlebars are going to be above the wheels even laying on the ground because of the way the bike is made. Yeah?
For the sealed object containing fluid, when you buy a bike, or I guess when the bicycle is manufactured, there's no fluid in it, and it's generally something you add.
You buy bicycles with deflated tires?
Well, not really, but.
Okay, well, it won't infringe while it's in the factory, but when they put it on the showroom floor, it's going to infringe. See, you don't have to have infringement at every moment of its existence. You only have to have infringement when they're collecting the money and you're looking for a royalty rate. Yeah.
Can we comment about the relative size of the tires to each other?
Well, I imagine you could, couldn't you? Any difference that you can note, you're entitled to claim. Tires larger than that shown in the front wheel of the tricycle is your claim, essentially. Trying to do a negative limitation over the prior art, yeah?
You could just say tires are equal size. Because they're not all the same size.
Well, you got a problem with that. Those two tires are of equal size in the prior art. Where all the tires are of equal size, that would work. Then that's pretty easy to design around if I put a training wheel on my bicycle. Okay.
Something about like the mechanism for aligning two tires on the same plane.
Ooh, I like that. Where these tires are never aligned in the same plane, ever. These tires can be aligned in the same plane. That's really cool. Because it's hard to make a bicycle where the tires aren't substantially in the same plane when it's lined up to go straight.
I contend they're all in the horizontal plane, not the vertical plane.
Yeah, but you're right. We would need to put in additional limitations, but the concept is really cool to talk about the planes of the position of the tires. So let's write that where a vehicle. Ooh, that's really a broad claim, isn't it? Because that will cover cars and things. Ooh, I like that. Okay, vehicle having two tires whose we would need more words to make it more clear, but essentially, vehicle having two tires aligned in the same alignable in the same plane. That one is good. Get a gold star for that. Or a black star, or a white star, I don't know.
Wouldn't the two wheels in the back on the tricycle be in a plane?
They're not aligned. As I said, we'd need more words to that effect. You'd have to define the plane of the wheel and then have that plane be coincident. But the concept is good.
Do we have multiple gears on our bike?
It doesn't show them. So this is the kind of thing that working on patent claims over time, you really can make a difference in getting an invention that's broad enough so when commercial products come out, the words still cover them, even though they've changed the design from that which you were looking at when you were originally writing the claims. So we've done nothing with the gold-plated, have we? What can we do with the gold-plated? That's in the prior art. Not a whole lot, because that does reflect. Well, I suppose you could just go with colors. Say, now you can't. It was easy to do with leather. Leather that reflects light. Now, why are we limiting that to leather that reflects light? Let's broaden this up. What can we do with leather that reflects light? Because that just has black leather. Natural material. Assuming that's not latex rubber from a tree, but it's still not. Natural. Yeah, you could say material from an animal that reflects light. I don't know whether that rubber is made from latex, which would be an organic material from trees. So I can't be assured of that, but I could say material from an animal that reflects light, and that would be much broader than leather. Why limit yourself to leather?
But then synthetic leather gets around.
And could we also add?
So we have to have two claims: one that keeps leather and one that.
Okay, that's good. That's good. More claims, the merrier.
We had a seat that reflects light, and then no matter what the seat material is, it's colored.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, and that's what he was saying. Try different approaches. Seat that reflects light. That's good.
Why do you even have to say a seat? Why can't you just say, like, it reflects light?
Well, because the prior art has gold-plated things that reflect light, but not their seat.
There's nothing covering those wheels, right? But in the bicycle, there's the two little flaps covering the wheel.
These have fenders. Yeah, we've got fenders as a defined term. Yeah.
I don't like the chain link because you can buy bikes now in the high-end region that use a carbon belt drive.
They use a belt?
Yeah. So
Okay, well, we were trying to think of a generic term that covered both belts and chains, and we couldn't think of it. A flexible linking member? How about that? Is that pretty broad? I like that. So that will come to be broadened. It may take a little work. They have linking members here, But I don't really think those are flexible in the classic sense. But a chain you think of as being flexible, even though the individual components are not, and certainly belts are flexible. So I think that might work. Flexible linking member, that's good.
Does linking member imply that it's composed of individual pieces attached to each other? Are you saying you're linking?
Well, he's wanting to cover a belt as well. Now, yeah, I think we have to have linking member because there's arguably some flexibility in being able to turn the steering of the tricycle. So it has to have a linking component.
If we assume that our wheels are bigger than the tricycle wheels, could we claim wheels of a certain size to get all wheels larger than?
You could. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah?
Can you say a seat that you sit on, and if your feet aren't on the ground, you don't fall over? Or you do fall over?
Oh, you're wanting to get into the stability of the bicycle is not inherent in the bicycle? That's a tricky one, but that would be a good way to explore, to try to get things. It doesn't show a person in either of those, so we can't really put the person in the claim. But it is apparent that it's unlikely that that bicycle will stand in that position all by itself without leaning against something or somebody holding it or having a kickstand that's not shown. So, and that would be a good path to explore. That would be a more complicated claim, but that's we'll just put a stability issue. I guess you could balance it perfectly as long as there's no wind, and in theory could get it to stay. But inherently it's not very stable. Question mark, okay. Anything else?
When it says gold plating, does that mean literally made of gold?
Sure. Yeah, the only prior art that we know of for tricycles is fully gold plated as to all components other than the tires and the seat. It's gold plated pedals, gold plated linkage, gold plated spokes, rims. So we certainly have lowered the cost on this. A precious metal free bicycle? I don't know.
And see, would that be dated to like when the patent was issued? Because if it was made of a certain metal, it became precious in 10 years.
Ah, yes, that's that you'd want to define precious in more precise terms. But yeah, it could be that gold will become very plentiful once they know how to change water into gold or whatever that the alchemists are trying to do. Base metals into gold. I can't remember what it was that they were going to do. I was just thinking, maybe that's not a good claim. Any other thoughts? Well, anyway, this is the concept that we're going to try to work on.
So what's a good way to practice, I guess? I mean, to look at prior art, look at patents, and try to develop claims before you read them?
To prepare for the test?
Correct.
Well, you practice by doing your homework, you're practicing by watching this. Just set up hypotheticals and do the same kind of thing. I don't think there's a resource you can go to that's really going to help you much in order to do this other than setting up your own hypotheticals, just as we've done, and then just thinking about them for a while. One of the troubling things about patent law that makes it so difficult is that there's no place you can look up and find out about these new inventions that people have just made. And that's why this kind of discipline is very important, because you're dealing with something that never before has happened. And one of the tricks that people are lulled into is thinking that they can go to an earlier patent that relates to the technology of their invention and look at and see how they did their patent claims. That will almost always be the wrong thing to do. Those prior people that came up with the tricycle and tried to get a patent on their tricycle, they were comparing it to completely different prior art than is relevant to these distinctions that we're now making. And so you cannot look at the claims of an earlier patent in order to give you guidance as to how to write claims on your patent. It is virtually of no value, and it's almost always distracting. That has nothing to do with the question of how your invention should be defined and distinguish over the prior art. How the other people distinguished from even further, earlier prior art is of no value to you. And you'd normally think you want to figure out how to do something, you see how other people did it in the past, sort of copy their form. It doesn't work at all in patent law that way. It works quite the opposite. However they distinguished is probably quite irrelevant to what it is that makes yours distinctive, and yours is different. That's a good point. But yeah, I think you do the same kind of thing we're doing here. We could start another one and put a little bit of time in it. But you can start and get your basic concepts, and each one that you get, you can then think about. Is this even as broad as it could be? Is there any word in there that I can make broader? We have tires. Well, let's just have a sealed object containing fluid. Does it have to be sealed in order to do that? Well, probably does, because there's going to be, doesn't show it up there, but this is going to be in an atmosphere of air. So everything there has air all around it. So if it's not sealed, it loses the benefit of being a sealed object. You can't get the benefit to distinguish from the prior art that way. But pretty much multicolored rubber, we got broader by light reflecting rubber. That's pretty broad. We did pretty well with the leather that reflects light. And then I didn't write it down, but we were saying animal material that reflects light. And then just a seat that reflects light. Now, is there something broader than seat? A horizontally planar member that reflects light. You can go at it that way. That's not shown in the prior art. The only horizontally planar member in the prior art is black. That's much broader than seat, right? And there may well be other ways that we can go about differentiating that seat besides made out of animal material or horizontally planar. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. I don't know if this is negative, but since gold floats in water, could you say, like on the left bike, that is made of objects that do not float in water?
I disagree with your premise, and we know nothing about the specific gravity of any of the materials on the left, so we can't make those claims.
Couldn't it be arguable that your planar object that reflects light could infringe upon the other, because the other bicycle is completely gold and there's horizontal bars and...
Yeah, are the horizontals planar or are they linear? If we defined planar as a sort of a two-dimensional flatness part of it, maybe just for the little tiny part in the top of the bar that goes across. If they're square bars, maybe you're right.
Like the pedals could be planar?
Yeah, they could be. Yeah, so maybe that one is maybe that one reads on the prior art. So maybe we lose with the horizontally planar member because it might read on the pedals.
So if there, go ahead.
Can we replace the fenders with something that protects against the water? Because then it would include a roof if someone would want to have a roof above his bike.
I'm not understanding.
Like now we say fenders because it protects us against the water from the street.
Uh-huh.
But there are actually bikes that have like a roof on top of it, so that you don't get hit by water from the top.
Okay.
So if you say like rain protection or water protection device instead of fender.
Water deflecting.
Or water
Yeah, 'cause can you come around with like a mud flap? too,
Yeah,
then?
yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a little tricky, though, isn't it? A water deflection device, because the tricycle seat is a water deflection device, and the tricycle handlebars are a water deflection device. Depending, the handlebars, minimally as they are, prevent the raindrops from hitting your shoe if the raindrop happens to be coming right where the handlebar is. So you couldn't be so broad as to say that, but your concept is, of course, this also functionally is trying to prevent water from being thrown upwardly, and you're thinking about water that's coming down, but nonetheless, it's a water barrier. It's a device whose primary function is to protect against the water going where you don't want it to go. So you might be able to broaden fender to something that is a member whose primary function is to redirect water. How about that? Does that work? A member whose primary function is to redirect water?
With mud, do you include it?
Could you go to like environmental?
Well, you could define it whose primary function is to redirect mud, but then that's not going to cover the top on your Surrey that he's trying to get covered with that language.
Like environmental elements, maybe, or something like that?
Well, I don't know whether that's smog or... But that's a good concept. Yeah, it would be difficult, but that would be my best offhand suggestion. A device that whose primary function is to redirect water. I'm running out of room to write it, but yeah, that's really pretty imaginative. Now, in a real patent application, if this was your disclosure and you were trying to get this claim, they would probably say that you haven't given enough examples of a device whose primary function is to redirect water, so you'd want to include in the patent application when you wrote it, saying we've shown fenders, but everybody would know that you could also accomplish a similar thing by putting a roof on the top, or whatever alternatives come to mind, so that there would be other examples to support that broad of a statement. But in theory, you could get that claim with that.
Is it not a good idea to do something where you define what the primary function of something is, just because...
It's generally not a good idea to do that. I was just sort of on the spur of the moment, we're trying to respond to the suggestion, which was a good one, to think about is there some way we can more broadly claim fenders? And he's doing exactly the right thing. You look at every word and say, we have fenders here. That's pretty narrow. Is there some way we can broaden that concept to claim something else?
Could you not just say a piece of an object that is covering tires? And if I came up with an object then...
Well, fenders pretty much encompasses an object that covers tires, if that's all you're trying to. What example would there be of an object that covers tires that's not a fender? So I think it's a good word, except it's limited to covering tires. And the thought is maybe we could be broader than that. So, okay, well, I look forward to seeing you. Our class for most people will be a little shorter because the test tends to take less than the full time. So you might get out a little early next week.